Hey guys, Will here. Today I'd like to talk about raiding. Raiding has always been the pinnacle of content in WoW. It's been the focus of nearly every patch, and is the most difficult and rewarding activity in the game. Even though the raiding population has historically been a minority, even non-raiders would get excited when seeing patch trailers or a raid-geared player standing around the cities, hoping one day that they too would see that content. At least, that's how it used to be. Raiding from vanilla WoW until the end of Cataclysm was a fairly exclusive activity, even though there were steps to make it more accessible along the way. While Pandaria's raids have been pretty great overall, they still feel like they're missing something to me. So what happened to raiding? Well, a lot of things were changed or removed. One of the biggest parts of raiding early on used to be the act of zoning into the instance itself. I'm mainly talking about attunements, the long, tedious quest chains from vanilla and the Burning Crusade. Some of them were rich in lore and story, and that was okay, but it didn't make them any less painful. Even though getting attuned for Onyxia or Hyjal was annoying, it built up these places in your mind. You felt like you accomplished something when you finally got there. It was challenging and time-consuming, which made the actual raid experience feel important and special once you made it inside. When you inevitably lost a raider, you'd have to recruit more, and more than likely, you'd have to gear him up and get him attuned. While taking a raid night to run through Tempest Keep while you were already progressing in Black Temple wasn't the greatest experience, it, again, made raiding feel like an elite, exclusive activity. You were among the best players in the game if you were a raider, even if you weren't world first. Over time, though, attunements were removed or shortened. 6 months after the Burning Crusade, you didn't have to be attuned to enter Serpent Shrine or Tempest Keep. After Sunwell was released, Karazhan, Hyjal, and Black Temple were open to all as well. I'll admit that these attunements were overly complicated and at times ridiculous, especially the dungeon ones, and I'm not saying that adding these back would help the game, but something similar, some sort of attunement system, that could be pretty nice. Besides attunements though, there were a lack of catch-up mechanics. If you didn't raid at the beginning of the expansion, it was very difficult to catch up. In fact, people were doing the older content and lower tiers for gear, not just for achievements, during the entire expansion. These days, whenever a new patch is released, Blizzard funnels all of the players into the most current content. Why bother doing Throne of Thunder or Tier 14 when you can easily jump straight into Siege of Orgrimmar LFR with a little help from the Timeless Isle? That old raid content is made obsolete, but for what purpose? Alright, so it allows players to gear up alts or play with their friends, but it also increases burnout dramatically. We're seeing the same raid so many times. In patch 5.4, the only relevant content is Siege of Orgrimmar. Every player who seeks to progress their character is raiding on one of the several difficulties. Casual players see it in LFR, others in Flex, Normal, Heroic, but everyone sees it. I guess the idea is that you'd progress through all 4 difficulties and enjoy the content, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. Many LFR players don't move past that initial difficulty. They see the content, and then they're done. They unsubscribe into the next tier. There's really no motivation to do the harder difficulties. Even the gear they would get, it's just a recolor of what they already have. Sure, a few achievements here or a mount there, those things are nice, but the bottom line is doing these bosses again on a harder difficulty, it's just not very appealing to most people. Now, I'm not saying remove LFR or Dungeon Finder or whatever. I don't dislike casual players. I think casual players need content, and they're an extremely important, they're the majority. But previously, you had different content for different players. In vanilla, you could still advance your character through dungeons and the sets from those quests. Heroics in Karazhan and BC or Naxxramas and Wrath, those things were fairly casual, and they were well received. You never felt like you ran out of things to do. Whereas now, even with features like scenarios, challenge modes, or pet battles, it feels like there's less to do than ever. I'm saying that instead of different difficulty levels of the same content, have different content for the varying levels of player. Even if it means less resources are put into raids overall, that's okay. Exclusive content can be its own reward. Sure, we have heroic-only phases or occasionally bosses, but that's just not the same as an entire raid, like Sunwell Plateau. Some players love quests, or dailies, others like Timeless Isle or dungeons, so there's no real need for every player to raid. LFR being the only progression path for a casual player, it's very strange to me. I mean, the loot system feels very unrewarding at times, and many of the players in LFR never raided before its existence, and a lot of them never wanted to. Before Pandaria, dungeon content was a fine endgame for many people, and before that, quest and leveling characters was okay too. I'm advocating a less is more approach. I think raids like Vanilla Naxxramas and Sunwell Plateau were great in part due to their exclusivity. If you made it there, you felt great for that accomplishment, and if you didn't, well, you wanted to get there, and you tried hard to do it. There was always something new to see, and someplace new to go. There was tons of content just waiting for you. Today, you can press a button and see all the content the game has to offer in a few hours. People enjoy themselves the most while they're working towards a goal. Things just aren't quite as fun if you're given all the rewards without putting in effort. You take them for granted, and you still want more. So, what do I want Blizzard to do, right? I know they won't remove the Dungeon Finder, or LFR. Those things are pretty impossible to take out at this point. It would do more harm for the game than adding them in initially did in the first place. But I do see ways to make that content feel just a little bit more exclusive again. First off, dungeons should be more difficult. Pandaria heroics were a joke at the appropriate gear level, and are practically soloable now. I'm not saying they need to be Shattered Halls or Grim Batal, but definitely harder than what we have now. Now this seems like it's already happening. Blizzard has said that they're aiming for around Heroic Vortex Pinnacle difficulty in the expansion, which I'm very glad to hear. Secondly, attunements for raids, including LFR. I know, it seems like a hassle, but hear me out. It doesn't have to be agonizing like the Burning Crusade attunements, but just something that might take a few days to complete. Maybe doing all the heroic dungeons, some quest chains around Draenor, maybe a solo scenario like on the Isle of Thunder. That'll make the content feel more exclusive and more rewarding when you actually get there. Now, this suggestion is probably not feasible, but I think this would be a great addition. I'd like to see a raid that has only one difficulty, 20-man mythic. Even if it only had 5 bosses or whatever, just an extension of the bonus boss format we've been seeing. It would drive players to get better and start rating the more difficult content, to attempt to see it for themselves. It could be gated or require massive attunements. The point is just to have a really exclusive piece of content that people can use as a goal. That journey, the adventure, is something that the game hasn't had in many years, and I think it would make it a lot more fun overall. And that's really all I can say on the subject until we get more info about the expansion. Let me know what you guys think. I know my perspective on this is pretty hardcore, and I know that a lot of people will disagree with it, and I don't think my ideas are perfect. I want to hear your feedback. I want to start a conversation about rating and exclusive content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.